But are you saying that your suit is a way for the average American to become powerful, to take the bull by the horn and stop this process and make a difference?
Absolutely. I think that people have been sold a bill of goods when they say their vote doesn't matter. Their vote absolutely does matter. Look at the hanging chads that brought in President Bush too. I mean, it was a matter of just hundreds of votes. So yes, and it determined the course of a nation, the course of the world. Every vote does count. People need to understand that they need to exercise their voting power. And what we're seeing now is a despondent group of people that live in our economy who believe that their vote doesn't count. But it does, because our economy and our country was designed as a representative democracy. And what that means is that we are a republic. We're a nation of laws, not of men. If we're a democracy, the majority rules. In a republic, we have laws that protect the weak, the innocent, and the minorities. And that's the major difference. And if we're going to preserve that thing that made America great, the American dream, the beacon for the world of liberty and freedom, I think that's at the core of it, is that people have a voice and that they can make a difference. And if people have become so apathetic and that they've lost this will to watch over the people that they're putting in as their representatives, then we're going to get what we deserve.
Well, explain specifically then how your suit and how people joining your suit can make people powerful, they can make their voice being heard.
Absolutely. The entire design of this litigation is a grassroots movement. We're not going around simply taking, a half a dozen people and calling them a class, which you can do in civil class action. We're asking everyone to join the suit. We want everyone to sign up. It's free. It doesn't cost a thing. You can go on our website at www.suethefed.com, and at that website people can see that they can sign up for free and that they can become what we call a co-plaintiff. Plaintiffs are the people who bring a lawsuit. Defendants are the people that you attack in a lawsuit. We're going to be attacking the Federal Reserve, and we hope to have tens of millions of people acting together as co-plaintiffs. That's a voice that is louder than the Fed has ever heard. We the people coming together in those kinds of numbers form an irresistible force against this, what we believed, an immovable object. But they're not immovable. Everyone thought big tobacco was going to be immovable. We sued them successfully. We're going to do exactly the same model, exactly the same way, but with slight modifications in terms of efficiency, being able to use the internet and everything in order to gather people and to educate people. Once they join, they can join for free and become a co-plaintiff. And our attorneys will contact them, and they will literally bring them in and add them to the suit in their local jurisdiction. Tens of millions of people and thousands of lawsuits all across the country, all attacking the Fed at the same time. It's going to be an armada. It's going to be the largest litigation in history.
We've never seen anything like this in history, have we?
No, there's never been anything like this. The Federal Reserve affects every one of us in different ways. And in order to defeat them, our counsel recommended that this be done on a very broad scale, where they were simply attacked and would be overwhelmed by the power of the people, by the voice of the people, demanding a redress of their grievances, demanding that this interest component be returned to them so that they can recover this amount of money that they've paid out, which was done under fraud. And you can imagine, we're suing the Fed for over $100 trillion of what we believe that they have taken fraudulently from us, knowing full well that there is a group of people, statistically, that will not be able to make those payments. They don't know if it's you or me or you. They don't know who, but they know that there is a group of people that they are going to press into forcing them to release as they seize their assets. This is the fraud. This is unconscionable. This is unfair. This is why the Fed is guilty and why they will lose. It's that simple.
So let me see if I get this straight now. So the average person can actually join this suit?
Yes.
And they can recover damages?
Yes. Yeah, we expect that the average taxpayer is in line to accept to recover approximately $1 million in the course of this litigation.
Wow. That is a wow.
Yes, because that's the amount of money that the Federal Reserve has taken from all of us as citizens as they have foisted this interest component on this massive amount of debt, both on the commercial side, businesses, the people, as well as the government, and all the time raking in this interest as their profit for doing nothing. This is the fraud. This is why they'll lose. And this is why people need to understand that not only can we save our democracy, save our republic, and stop this madness, but there is a financial reward for each of them at the end of this if it works out the way we have it planned. And it could be a substantial paycheck for the average American person.
Why would Congress ever give up its power to create money and give it to a private entity?
Well, this was done, as you may know, back in 1913. That's when the original Federal Reserve Act was created. And this was done under dubious circumstances at best. The Federal Reserve Act was passed on December 23rd when most of Congress had gone home. And the banks had kept their group of senators back, saying that there was going to be a secret vote. And when the number of the number of senators who had left had dropped to just barely a quorum, they called an immediate vote to have this Federal Reserve Act, the Federal Reserve created by this law, come into being. The vast majority of the people, of the senators who had left, had expressed their absolute opposition to the Federal Reserve Act. So they let them go home. And they kept their people there, so they were able to pass this in the biggest manipulation of our constitutional system ever.
Well, what does Congress get out of this for doing it? I can see what the bankers get out of it, but what does Congress get out of it?
Well, today when you look at the way that campaigns are financed, it costs millions of dollars to launch a campaign as a congressman, tens of millions as senators, possibly hundreds of millions or more for president. And where does that money come from? It doesn't come from the average person, $5 here, $10 there. It comes from these massive corporate campaigns, the corporations who are supported by the major banks. So the major banks make sure that the companies that they have chosen to win. Remember, the banks are able to pick the winners, the banks, the companies that they support, and they get to pick the losers, the companies that they don't support. So in exchange for them continuing to support these companies that have now grown up to become these huge multinational corporations that have balance sheets bigger than some countries, these are the entities that support our Congress and senators. And the congressmen and senators know that. That's where they get the money to stay in power. And so if you're a congressman, the lure of the power is so incredible that you're willing to do almost anything. Some people say that the elected official would sell their soul for $1. And it may be true. I'm not here to judge them. But I do know for a fact that the practical reality is it costs so much money to run a successful campaign that if you're thinking about making politics a career, most politicians are career politicians these days, that they know where they have to go to get the money to do it. So the banks support the corporations, which support the politicians. So they know which tit to suck from. They know where they're getting fed. And that's the simple truth.
Isn't there a quote that Thomas Jefferson said about the company, if we ever allow a central bank, that the companies that will spring up around the banks will become corrupt? Is that what you were talking about here?
Yes.
Did our founding fathers really understand central banks and understand the dangers that they represented to this country?
Absolutely. They were students of history. They had a very clear vision for what they wanted for our country when they founded it, which is why they wrote the Constitution the way they did. They said, Congress shall print its own money, essentially, in Article 1, Section 8. They weren't fooling around with that. They understood that if the central banks, which were private companies, could support, their crony capital corporations that would surround them, other banks, other large corporations that needed, these massive cash flows to pay their employees and to support their inventories and to do research and development, etc. They knew that eventually there would be one hand washing the other, with the central banks washing the hands of these corporations, and the corruption that they could create, because it's all under a cloak of secrecy, no one could know. And if the banks can simply print money from nothing and use fractional reserve to expand that, 10, 100 times, that they could supply these corporations with all the money that they would need. And yet the smaller corporations, the entrepreneurs, the farmers, the average person trying to make a living for themselves, they're not privy to this special private banking monopoly. They don't have the access of power. And this is why this is a failed system. And what we're seeing really is a European system of feudalism that's being foisted upon America. Ultimately, if this runs its course, you will have the very, very wealthy elites and the very, very poor serfs. Where we are left with nothing, we have no ownership, we simply work the land and the factories and farms of the elites who own it all. And they are part and parcel of the banks. And let's not forget the government, because they're as conspiratorial in this as the other two factors, because the government maintains its power over the people. And in order, as we've seen now, we have a political elite. They don't seem to be interested in the will of the people. Obamacare was passed in the face of 72% of the American people saying, we don't want this. So we have a political elite that wants to remain a political elite. They're in bed with the central bank, they're in bed with these large corporations, and it just goes round and round.